Welcome back to the latest edition of Until Saturday. And last night, I was up until 10:30, 11 o'clock, sweating an NFL preseason game.
That bad.
So it feels like football season, right? Like, is that the epitome of football season? August 18th, here we are recording, and I'm just sweating preseason games like it was nothing.
Well, last night I watched the first episode of the Boston bombing documentary on Netflix and went to bed early, so I might be a little behind you, Ari.
Okay, so football season for me, and you're still catching up on your documentaries. Manny, were you watching?
I could do preseason NFL.
I was actually I had come back from coaching my daughter, my 8-year-old daughter's soccer team, which by the way we're terrible. There's nothing more frustrating than coaching 7 to 9-year-olds, Ari. And I actually started studying up on these quarterbacks. I could be ready for today's show, just so I could hang.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm fine being the only person that was sweating Kellen Mond throws in the third quarter of a preseason game.
Kellen Mond.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about him in at least 2 years.
I don't know if you guys are with me on this and the gambling thing aside, but I really enjoy watching preseason because I like watching old names that we used to discuss on the podcast and watch play in NFL games.
It is good guy remembering territory, like some very recent guys, but the play is just bad. And also it's like weird times and weird networks. It's a little bit like European soccer and like big boxing matches for me. And then I never find out the games are happening until they're already happening and I'm seeing tweets about them. So I feel like I'm very just the preseason just doesn't move the needle for me.
Well,
I get sad watching it.
Yeah, it's sad.
It is sad seeing some of these dudes just be like garbage time players.
They're getting paid a lot. I don't feel bad for them. It was cool watching DTR and Demetric Felton just get the band back together a little bit with the.
I heard DTR was getting after it.
Yeah, it's fun. Okay, why don't we get into the show? I didn't properly introduce everybody because these are familiar voices, but I am joined by Dave Ubben and Manny Navarro, and I am Ari Wasserman, and here to discuss quarterback tiers. We're going to do 3 conferences today as we continue to preview the season and get us ready for week 0, which, by the way, is in an hour. It is coming really, really quickly. So the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the ACC have a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of new faces. The transfer portal has created an environment where familiar faces are in new places. So in order to do that and kind of sift through all of those quarterbacks and what they're going to do and how they're going to play, we're going to break these down into tiers. Before we get started, let me always remind you to rate the podcast, to subscribe to the podcast, wherever you listen to them, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Stitcher, wherever you listen to it. Please subscribe, rate, and review. It's really big for the show. It helps us continue to find new people to listen and expands our audience. And then, of course, if you want to watch the YouTube channel where the famous Saturday night reaction shows will be living, the link to that is in the show's description. So, okay, let's start with the Big Ten. And Dave, I'll let you carry it away a little bit because Dave is the one who created the tiers, and Manny and I are going to box back and forth to see whether or not we agree with his tiers. It's a lot of information. So we're going to try to do each conference 20 minutes or 15 minutes each conference. It might seem like we're blowing through it. It's a lot of information, but if you are somebody who loves football, you're going to be getting a lot of football discussion today. So, Dave, why don't you break down your Big Ten tiers, tell us why, and then we'll assault you.
We got a 3-man tier 1, and it starts with Mr. J.J. McCarthy at Michigan. The conversation last year was, if he's got to throw Michigan to a win, can he do it? We saw him do it. A little bit. He's number 1. These aren't necessarily a ranking as much as a tier. But Talia Tagovailoa, also in that tier 1, and closed out by a newcomer. Shrug, roll your eyes if you must, but Tanner Mordecai, too accomplished, too much production to not put him in the tier 1 ahead of some other guys. Fellas, fair? Not fair?
I like Tanner Mordecai. I think he's going to be huge at Wisconsin. In fact, when I did my predictions, my oddly specific predictions, I said he was going to break Russell Wilson's school record for passing yards at Wisconsin, which, by the way, isn't much. I think it's.
I'm scared to ask what it is.
It's like 3,300 yards or something like that.
All right, that's not.
Yeah, so I think he threw for 3,500 last year at SMU. So I'm thinking with this new offense, they're going to be able to throw the ball well. They've got a balanced running game. It's going to be a good offense at Wisconsin this year. So I agree. I think you can throw Mordecai. in that top tier. My thing is, I think the guy missing up here is actually in tier 3.
Interesting.
Well, I was going to ask you, Dave.
I'm sure Ari agrees. Listen, I know before we get to it, that's fine. I'm not going to argue with you on this, but I will say that I don't think you could put guys who have not done enough in tier 1. If they might be tier 1 by October. We're talking about Drew Aller here, of course. Maybe Cal McCord also. I think you could see both of those guys in tier 1 by October. But for now, I think it's a little disrespectful to the other guys to throw them in the same bunk when you haven't done anything. Listen, for every next great quarterback, there's a Garrett Gilbert out there. It doesn't always work out.
Well, Dave, before I decapitate you verbally, I want you to just go through the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and tier 5, just like reveal the whole list first.
Okay.
That way, that when we're talking about it, people won't be surprised and they can kind of envision kind of where we are and they can get retroactively mad during the discussion.
Okay. Tier 2 is our co-pilot on the drive to 325, Mr. Cade McNamara. Another transfer in tier 2. Jeff Sims at Nebraska. My tier 3 are my guys that I think are going to be special, but they haven't done anything yet. And there's something to be said for that. So you have Drew Aller and Kyle McCord sitting down there in tier 3. Guys that they're like you know how you jump out of a pool and they're like, you're probably taller than that, but you're kind of crouched. There's a lot of potential energy with those guys, but they got to get it into kinetic energy. My tier 4 are guys that we've seen and I don't love. A trio of transfers. I feel like every single one of these guys is transferred. Ben Bryant from Northwestern. Seen him a little bit at Cincinnati. I saw him in person last year. Cincinnati-Arkansas game. Arkansas secondary, bad game. Ben Bryant, I didn't love what I saw. Hudson Card, Texas transfer. Have not loved what I've seen from him. Lost his job to a true freshman in Quinn Ewers. Another guy I've seen in person in the Sugar Bowl, Luke Altmaier popped in when Matt Corral hurt his ankle in the Sugar Bowl a couple years ago. Didn't love what I saw from him in that game at Ole Miss, but a promising guy. I think he's got really good arm talent, but just they recruited over him. Jackson Dart came in there and did some special things. And then my tier 5, Ethan Kaliakmanis at Minnesota, guy who took over late last season. Could be promising. I need to see a little bit more. I don't know how much the tools are there, but I like it. Gavin Wimsatt at Rutgers. Noah Kim at Michigan State. Also my tier 5. And Taven Jackson, Indiana. Taven Jackson, a guy that I have seen also quite a bit. Former Tennessee quarterback. Guy that I think has some upside to him, but hadn't done anything yet. So that's where we're at.
Okay. So if I were to do this, Dave, and I understand what you did, you can't overrank players. But the way that I view this is if I'm going to tier them the way that we're doing it.
I'm going to guess you're going to rank them by talent.
I'm going to rank them by who I would want the most.
I think okay, that's fair.
I think that to me is kind of the purest way of doing it. Because you can obviously go and say, well, these guys haven't played very much. But if you were in charge of assembling a Big Ten team and your number 1 pick, or like you were the number 3 or 4 pick and J.J. McCarthy, who's the clear favorite to go off the board did, let's say number 2 pick, J.J. McCarthy's off the board. Are you really going to take Tanner Mordecai over some of the guys that you have listed below?
No, but I
really think that?
I rank these with what have you done? What have you done? And I think at some point, this is the same. The argument that we're having right now is the same thing like the Alabama TCU playoff argument. It's the exact same concept. Okay, TCU, they weren't impressive a lot last year. Like they had a lot of flaws. They did a lot of things that made you sort of shake your head. But at the same breath, what you did has to matter at some point. And these other guys haven't done anything yet. So I like the upside. If you want to say you'll take them ahead of them, like I would probably take Drew Aller maybe second. Kyle McCord maybe second. But I also think there's an element of sometimes those guys get overrated because of everything that's around them. And a guy like Tagovailoa gets underrated because his team is not going to win 11 games. And people just sort of overlook him, but he's a really good player, even if he's got some flaws and does some things because he doesn't have the best offensive line where they're going to win 4 of their 5 one-on-ones and have the best receiving core in the country like Kyle McCord might have, or have maybe the best running game in the country like Drew Aller might have. So there's an element of, yes, those guys are probably more talented and haven't done anything yet, but I also think guys that come from the power schools do get slightly overrated in terms of just the pure quarterback play.
Yeah, well, the thing I think that is interesting about that is that, like, Gavin Wimsatt is a very talented player who, is in a really bad situation.
Mhm.
And hasn't played very much and enrolled early and all that stuff. It's like, do you think he's really a tier 5 quarterback in the conference? Or, like, I feel like you have to be consistent with the way that we're ranking them. If you're gonna neg people for not having experience or being early in their careers, like, I don't understand how you could have guys in tier 5 that are probably better than guys who have played more in tier 4. So, like, that's my only nitpick here. Like, I understand specifically, like, what you're talking about when you have a guy like Tanner Mordecai or Tagovailoa up there. Like, is Cade McNamara a better pick in the second tier than Drew Aller? Like, I would take exception to that notion, even
I
if
want to see
one
Cade.
hasn't played.
I'm very curious, what that looks like in Brian Ferentz's offense. I'm very curious.
What do you think it's going to look like, the Air Force out there, or what?
I don't know. I listen. I'm as fascinated with Iowa as anyone else. If we're ranking like the most interesting teams in the country this year, I mean, Colorado and Iowa are probably in the top 10, aren't they?
Yeah. So I guess if you're, like, ranking them based on just resume only, like, that's what I would do. But this is a podcast. We're supposed to project forward. I want to project forward here. And, like, my tier ones would probably be J.J. McCarthy, Drew Aller, McCord, just based on who I would take first. Those would be my top 3 picks. Then the second tier would probably be something like Jeff Sims, because I think he's really good. Maybe borderline top tier, depending on his experience and, of course, the situation that he was in. And then guys like maybe even Hudson Card or Cade McNamara to put down into that second tier. And then I would go on maybe potential with players who are really early on in their careers but are super talented. Like, are we sure that Noah Kim can't be very good, or Gavin Wimsatt isn't going to be very good? I think that would be the third tier. And then the fourth tier would be quarterbacks that we've seen a ton of and just don't like that much.
Maybe. I think Noah Kim definitely has some upside. I'm intrigued to see him. I think anytime you beat out a 2-year starter, my eyebrows are raised a little bit. So yeah, there's something to that.
And also,
I don't think has he played a snap.
But he's also, like, winning the battle right now with Caden Hauser, who was a top 200 player who was supposed to be like the quarterback of the future at Michigan State. So, like, when I see tier 5, what flashes in my mind is these guys stink. And I don't think that's fair for half the people who are on that list. Manny, what do you think?
Well, I did all this homework, right? My charts are.
Yeah, this guy's more charts than the Pentagon.
I'm just gonna share some raw data real quick. I'm not gonna make this long and drawn out. I'm just gonna give you some of this. All right, first of all, Talia Tagovailoa is the most experienced starter in the Big Ten. He's 15-12 as a starter, played close to 2,000 snaps. So in terms of experience, he's got the most. Next on the list, obviously, is Tanner Mordecai, 1,900 snaps, 14-10 as a starter in his career. Then you get to actually Northwestern's quarterback, Ben Bryant, who was at Cincinnati. He's 15-8 as a starter, close to 1,700 snaps. And then Jeff Sims is the fourth most experienced starter in terms of college snaps. He was 7-16, by the way, in his career at Georgia Tech. 1,500 snaps. So those are in terms of, like, guys who've just played a ton, those are your 4 most experienced guys when it comes to that category. Does that matter in this? I think another thing that matters that maybe we're not talking enough about, like when you mentioned Michigan State's quarterback Noah Kim, they've got the same offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach there for the past 4 years, and Jay Johnson. Like, to me, that matters. The fact that Noah Kim, he's been there for several years and he's kind of learned that offense over several years, probably helps him eventually elevate faster than maybe somebody who's been, who has a new offensive coordinator this year and is in a new system. So I think all of that will ultimately play out as the season progresses.
It's wild that just looking at this, there's 10 transfers.
Yeah.
Well, also, too, like, the thing that's interesting about the Big Ten and all these transfers, guys, is that, like, Luke Altmaier has a ton of talent, and he's going to a place where being kind of good at Ole Miss is like the best quarterback in Illinois history, maybe outside of Juice Williams, right? Like, I mean, the standards of going to Purdue for a kid like Hudson Card, who got benched for a freshman at Texas because they're afraid the coach is going to get fired if they don't win 10 games. Like, that's a place that you could settle into, not really feel the pressure of constantly having your job on the line, and then you go to a place like Purdue, ease into the coaching and the system, and have an Aiden O'Connell type year, which was like NFL quarterback. Like I don't know that I would even give up on the guys that you have in your tier 4. I think Hudson Card and Luke Altmaier could be very good for the plays that they had. And then lastly, I wanted to say this about JJ McCarthy, because we have put him on a pedestal and kind of just said he's unquestionably a top tier quarterback, and he's deserved that right. He beat Ohio State last year. But if you go back and you watch the Ohio State game or turn on the film and rewatch it, was there a single play that man made based on just pure talent alone that makes your jaw drop? Like, do you think that JJ McCarthy is a potential first round pick this year? Because I watched the game multiple times and I saw Ohio State get their ass kicked and JJ McCarthy throwing to guys that were open by 7 yards. And it's just like not like the precision passing machine that you would expect from a guy in this tier. So like as we go forward and we do more tier 1 guys, we're probably going to have some disagreements, because my idea of a tier 1 guy is like bona fide first round pick. And you might even say that the Big Ten, as we sit here right now on August 18th, has 0.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, how many Pac-12 quarterbacks would you take over every Big Ten quarterback? 5?
It's insane. The Pac-12 quarterbacks are absolutely insane talent-wise.
Experienced, talented, productive,
fun.
Fun. Yeah. Sorry, Cade McNamara. It's okay, buddy.
I honestly don't think there could be anything like. Listen, the Iowa situation is just inherently interesting, because I've never seen a coach have to hit certain statistical benchmarks to keep his job. Like that is just lunacy. So like Cade McNamara's role in that is just compelling naturally. But if it was just a regular year where this contract grab ass didn't exist, I couldn't give less of a shit about him or Iowa in terms of like entertainment factor. That is like boring squared.
I'm kind of attracted to toxic relationships between assistant coaches and coaches and their fan bases, though. And the Brian Ferentz Iowa fan situation, like, poor Scott Docterman, every time he tweets about him, writes about him, or anything, like the visceral, it's like blowing cold air on an exposed nerve on a tooth, right? Iowa fans just immediately start screaming when the Brian Ferentz's name comes up. I can't get away from that. So even if the contract situation was not as incredible as it is, I might still be attracted to it just because.
But Cade McNamara and Iowa is not a marriage of entertainment. Like that
no,
is
but
like,
Cade's done some stuff. I think when you look at the rest of this list, I did factor in experience and what you've actually done a lot in these tiers more than pure talent. Because I do agree that Drew Allen and Kyle McCord, I think, will have better years than Cade. I think they have certainly much more upside.
Will certainly get drafted ahead of him.
Yes, that's definitely true. But to me, it felt disrespectful to the guys that have played, like the Jeff Sims, like Cade McNamara's, who, have done some things, have played big time ball. Versus, Drew Aller and Kyle McCord. I mean, Aller has he's probably thrown 40 passes, maybe something like that. Maybe that might be too many. Has Kyle McCord played a snap?
He started a game. He started a game when CJ Stroud got injured. 2 years ago.
Those just haven't done anything. They haven't done a lot.
No, but you also have to consider situation in coach. Like you have to just blanketly assume that Kyle McCord's going to be awesome this year because of the situation.
Okay, but if you put Cade McNamara in Kyle McCord's shoes and you eliminated Devin Brown, and you put Kyle McCord in Iowa's shoes, what do you think the numbers would be? Do you think they would be kind of similar?
Oh, I mean, numbers, sure. I don't know if I would think that Cade McNamara is a better quarterback.
No, but I think a lot of people would. But that's what I'm saying is it gets complicated. Like, situation does complicate.
I think you could put John Elway in his prime into Iowa, and it would be a black hole of statistics. But, like, I don't think that Cade McNamara beat Ohio State. But, like, if anybody's watched the Ohio State-Michigan games the last 2 years, it's a lot of just ass-kicking in the trenches and a team lying down and getting their butts kicked. Like, it's not a example of elite level quarterback play that cannot be passed on the top 10 picks of the NFL draft. So from that standpoint, like, I don't know, what we're viewing here, but I've got one insane hot take that I need to get off before we go to the next conference. I'm gonna say it to Manny, who's like the king of spreadsheets and numbers. And like I think Nebraska fans love me because like I am sipping Matt Rule Kool-Aid. But if you marry Jeff Sims with a competent coach who has an above average talent level, which is completely different at Nebraska than it would be at Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Is there a scenario where Jeff Sims comes out and is like tier 1 badass and leads Nebraska to 10 wins this year? Because like I am on sneaky lookout for Nebraska being much better in year 1 than people are giving them credit for. And I think that's part of the reason.
10 wins, no. I think he could be, this guy, like, I watched a couple of Georgia Tech games last year, and I felt bad for Jeff Sims because you can kind of see the flashes. But, yeah, you look around, you got a bunch of talent issues. The scheme, it was very hard to, like, what are they trying to do here? You don't really get what they're going for. So, yeah, I think he can look really, really good. Leading them to 10 wins, no. I don't think the bodies are there, even in the West.
Competent game plan, competent coach, above average skill set, shitty division, I think is a really good combination.
8 wins, I'll buy. That's a possibility. 10, no.
Manny, whose side are you on?
Having watched Sims play Miami several times in person, there were plenty of opportunities. I thought he had an opportunity to make plays. I mean, certainly Miami. I mean, you watched them against Middle Tennessee State last year, right? And you're like, who couldn't pick apart this defense? But he struggled in a lot of games against Miami for whatever reason.
Manny, you're supposed to have a Stars Matter allegiance to me, man. What are you doing?
I know I'm supposed to. I just don't think. Look, I think he's capable of it, Ari. I think he's the kind of guy who could be on an NFL roster one day, and we're like, man, remember Jeff Sims didn't do much at Georgia Tech and was okay at Nebraska. Like he's in his 9th year in the NFL because he's got the talent to play here.
I fall in love with flashes. That's just me. When I see a flash of something. Dave, get your 6th grade smirk off your face, okay? Yes, I'll say it again. I fall in love with flashes. I did in 6th grade, and I do now. When I see something special, even if it's just a glimpse, I want to taste. You know what I mean?
What if we ended each of these segments with just sort of picking a guy who will be, I don't know, the all-conference first-team quarterback?
Sure, how about the guy who moves the most tiers? How about that?
Yeah, how about the guys who moved the most tiers in these crappy tier rankings that Dave gave us?
I'm gonna buy some Noah Kim stock. How about that?
I mean, you have to buy somebody from tier 5 because of the room to grow. I think Noah Kim is probably the best value purchase here, but I don't know. How about I buy some Hudson Card stock?
Not a fan of Hudson Card, are you?
I've seen too much Hudson Card, Ari. No.
Purdue Hudson Card could be fun.
Graham Harrell, I think, has done some good things, but it didn't go great at West Virginia. The shine's off of him a little bit. I don't know. First year, he got a lot of runway at Texas, and I just never saw anything at Texas where we talked about, when you're at places that have talent advantages and you have all these guys around you and Bijan,
but you're
all
the
these
number
guys.
one person who says that Texas has a problem that you can't identify. Maybe that problem's been eradicated now, and Hudson Card has been freed from the incompetence.
Maybe. I think he might have been part of the problem. Go back and watch the Arkansas game, Ari, and call me back.
I've watched a lot of Texas games. I know what you're talking about, but I also have seen a lot of Purdue games, and Purdue's got some sneaky good quarterbacks, and I know the coaches are different there now, but it is the cradle of quarterbacks.
You're a Louisville fan, then.
Yeah, yeah. But this is something that was occurring before Jeff Brom. I mean,
sure,
it's the cradle of quarterbacks.
Yeah. Well, AOC's not walking through that door again at Purdue. He's gone.
Kyle McCord's going to be the first-team quarterback. He's got the best receivers.
I think Manny's right.
I mean, I guess if you have Marvin Harrison on your team, you could be a tier 5 guy and still have a pretty good year. He is maybe the best receiver prospect I've ever seen. Is that a fair thing to say?
I think a lot of people agree with you. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, who's the one I'm forgetting? Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison. I'm forgetting the other Superman.
Chris Olave.
Yes, Chris Olave. I mean, all those guys, it's like the Bama guys, the run that they had. They're all so good that they almost run together, and they almost
Dave. I'm saying I've ever seen anywhere.
I know that, but I'm just saying,
okay,
when you see guys excel in that run, when there's so many that are so good in such a short amount of time, they almost take away from one another's legacy because it's if Jerry Jeudy had played for Alabama, I don't know, in 2012 or something, like, would we talk about him differently? And they had the Julio and Amari Cooper years, but like,
it's easier to take them for granted when it's happening regularly.
Yeah, and then like the next year, another guy does something. It's almost like the Texas Tech quarterback.
Or it happens
thing.
at the same time. Like Jackson Smith and Jigba just got drafted after not playing last year, and he led the team in receiving with. I mean, they were all on the same team.
Yes,
like, and they were all first. And Jamison Williams was on that team.
Yes, So I don't disagree with you about Marvin Harrison Jr., but I think it's hard when they've had so much success that against all odds, it might be possible that Marvin Harrison Jr. is underrated.
I think 19-1 as a Heisman pick is a very, very good value bet. Because Ohio State's quarterback, is a tier 3 quarterback right now. And I think that he's going to put up numbers, and I think Ohio State's going to be there at the end, and he's going to do things that other people can't do in terms of body control and flashiness. And like 19-1 right now is a tasty number. Okay. So should we go to Big 12? All right, go ahead, Dave. And
tier 1, I think the guy who made me say wow the most last year, Jalen Daniels, certainly tier 1 guy. Quinn Ewers, I'll put in there. I saw enough from him, and then obviously there's an element of we saw enough last year. There's an element of projection in there. I think he's a tier 1 guy. Will Howard at Kansas State. You can make a case for him as the best quarterback in the league. And I'll put Dylan Gabriel in there at Oklahoma. I hated what I saw from him last year, but I think last year just the vibes were not good at Oklahoma. And at the end of the day, he's done a lot. I'll put him in the tier 1 just out of necessity. Tier 2, Tyler Shuck at Texas Tech. Bunch of upside. I think he might be a tier 1 guy like mid-October. John Rice Plumlee at UCF. Hard to know what to make of him. He's had a weird career, but this sort of rebirth. He's a little bit like the white Nick Marshall in some ways. I think it's a good comparison for him at UCF. Blake Shapen at Baylor. Some upside. Don't love his tools, but I love his ability, decision-making, his accuracy. I think
he's very Baylor.
Yeah, well, yeah, new Baylor. Old Baylor always had like the freaks, Bryce Petty, RG3, the like new Baylor. Yeah, I think there's a game manager aspect to it that like Blake Shapen, I can safely say has never made me say wow, but he's never made me cringe either.
Didn't Baylor let the freak leave?
Which freak are we referring to?
Drones. Wasn't he kind of freakish tool wise?
Yeah, I mean a little bit. I guess at the end of the day, accuracy and all that stuff.
No, but he's a freak athlete though, isn't he? That was his whole thing was like let him run, let him cook a little bit, and he was.
I don't think that's what Dave Aranda. That doesn't seem like Dave Aranda's MO, but maybe.
Well, I think that's why he left.
Yeah, tier 3, as we've seen, have some upside, but Keaton Slovis, BYU. This is school 3, I believe. Chandler Morris, TCU. Another weird career. Certainly a guy that Ari loves in terms of recruiting stars, but we need to see more on the field. Donovan Smith at Houston, transfer. And then our tier 4 guys, couple transfers in this group. The weirdest career of anyone in this, Alan Bowman at Oklahoma State. I think he's going to
Emory Jones has had a pretty weird career too.
I won't say a weird career. I'll just say he's been Emory Jones the whole time. And he's, it is what it is. Emory Jones at Cincinnati, and then Garrett Green at West Virginia, who hadn't locked that job down just yet. And then Iowa State post Hunter Deckers, who seems like that is over and done with. Rocco Becht, I'm going to go with. Have not seen him play. I believe he's 6'7", if I'm not mistaken. But sort of an unknown entity, and that's going to be a weird situation at Iowa State this year. Those are your Big 12 tiers.
Yeah, the only guy I think that you have maybe a little underranked is John Rice Plumlee, and I know, and maybe it's because I'm in Florida and I've seen UCF play, but he's so dangerous just running the football. He's run for over 2,000 yards in his career, 23 touchdowns, and in this offense with Gus Malzahn, I think he's one of the more dangerous quarterbacks in the league. He's played a lot. I think, like I said, 1,700 snaps or something like that. So. I mean, to me, I would move him into the top 5. I don't know if he's.
I might be prejudiced against quarterbacks who endure a position move. That's possible.
I didn't see anything on this list that made me want to pull my hair out. So you're already improving. The thing that I am a little bit interested in here, and it got my Texas antennas percolating a little bit, is you have Quinn Ewers in your top tier. So if we're going to use the same, because I'm going to put you in a pretzel here for a minute, but if we're going to use the same thought process of tiers from the Big Ten, which is, guys who switch their teams or whatever, and who's the great quarterback? Is this you saying that Texas has a great quarterback? And if so, how are you so vehemently against the notion that they could win enough games to make the playoff this year?
I'm not against the notion. I just think they're gonna cough up a dumb game at one point. My issue with Texas. I'm with you on paper. I'm with you. I think Texas makes a ton of sense in the playoff on paper. I just don't trust them. I think I think they show up and they get down 17-0 to some stupid team at an 11 a.m. kick, and then they just can't dig their way out of the hole, and then that's it. That's what I think.
Dave,
Texas
here's
is.
the difference, though. When's the last time that Texas had a bona fide tier 1 quarterback? No doubt about it.
It's a good question.
So if you have Quinn Ewers as a tier 1 quarterback, don't the circumstances of this year's team seem different? If you are bought into this, because when I looked at your list, I was anticipating seeing Quinn Ewers in the second tier. And I think there is a certain thought process from a large portion of fans out there that think that he is an entitled brat who left high school early, went to Ohio State, couldn't hack it there, transferred back home, and isn't very good. And I think that notion is completely and utterly wrong. I think people saw last year some of the bad and aren't seeing the good. I see a player that could be a top 3 quarterback in America this year.
Yeah. All right.
So
by
for
the way,
you to put him in,
Texas is going to yell at you for getting Sam Ehlinger.
Do you think he's a tier 1 guy?
In the Big 12, sure.
I mean, he was a really, 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 really good college quarterback.
All right, he's a tier 1 Big 12 quarterback. Maybe not nationally, but come on.
Yeah.
Okay,
all right. So, yeah, you forgot him too. So let's not just dump that on me. But I'm just saying, if Quinn Ewers is a top 15 draft pick and he's that type of tier 1, and I know Ehlinger started games in the NFL. I'm not disparaging him. But if he's that dude, that is an entirely different proposition for that team this year.
I don't know if he's that dude as much as a tier 1 Big 12 quarterback. On this list, the Big 12 list is very interesting because I don't see a ton of guys on this list that I'm like, oh, they got a lot of upside. He probably has the most upside, but he's already shown a lot. I don't see a lot of guys that I'm like, oh, he's going to go from a nobody to blowing up. I'm not sure there's anybody on this list unless you want to make a case.
Well, it's not like the Big Ten too in terms of crazy, musical chairs quarterbacks either. It's we kind of have an idea of who these people are and how they look in the uniforms that they're playing in.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, Quinn Ewers, I think he can be a top 15, 20 quarterback in the country this year, maybe higher. So
top 5, maybe?
No, not top 5. I don't see that this year. I think he can get there. I don't think he does that this year.
I think there's a legitimate chance that he is a first-round pick in April.
That's a different question, though, Ari. You're talking about
Manny, help me out here.
No, I'm with Ari. First of all, he's the only 5-star quarterback in the conference. We're going back to stars and talent. There really just isn't a lot in terms of the Big 12. You go up and down the recruiting rankings of all these guys and how much hype they had coming out. He is the only one. Whereas in the Big Ten, you've got J.J. McCarthy, who was a 5-star, and obviously Kyle McCord and others that were 5-star, Drew Aller. So to me, from a talent perspective, putting him at the top of the list in tier 1 makes complete and total sense. And he's got the kind of team that can win the conference around him. So I'm with Ari. I'm buying the Quinn Ewers stock. I think part of this is, Oklahoma doesn't have, Dylan Gabriel's good, right? But he's not your typical Oklahoma Heisman quarterback, contender. And really, Jalen Daniels, when you're putting Kansas's quarterback in the top 3, and nothing against Jalen Daniels, I think he's a talent, but Kansas shouldn't have the 3rd best quarterback in the league in the Big 12, but that's kind of what you have. That's just the situation because of departures, transfers, etc. And so I think without question, Quinn Ewers is the best QB going into the season.
I don't know. I'm very intrigued to see what Jalen Daniels has for this upcoming year at Kent. He is the guy that made the most wow plays last year. I talk about when I fill out my Heisman ballot, one of the things that I do factor in is like who just like made my jaw drop the most. And last year, Bijan was up there. Like I think I voted him third. Yeah, I had Caleb 1, Hendon Hooker 2, and Bijan third. And part of the reason was because like I don't really care like about the win-loss stuff. Like Bijan was unbelievable last year. Like the dude, people could not get him down. And like, so Jalen Daniels, to me, like you have a lot of those wow plays. Like Quinn, I'm still waiting for it. Like I think he can get there. He's going to have a ton of receivers. He's going to have a ton of guys around him and all that stuff. And I think the line play should be better. But like to take that next leap of like, this is the guy that's going to be, if you win the Big 12 and you get to the playoff, he's the guy that drove you there. He might get there this year, but he might still be a year away.
Well, here's the thing too, of just like the notion of quarterbacks and their readiness. It doesn't take 3 years to be really good in college. You know, it's like, he might get there this year. It's like, if he doesn't, he's not getting there. Like, this is year 2 of starting.
So he has to go into the stratosphere this year for you?
I just feel like if he's going to be that guy who's a top 15 pick in the NFL draft, we're going to know it this year. What is this idea where we have to wait till year 3 or 4 of someone's career to know if they're going to be great? Like the greatest players at the position we know really immediately. Good,
but I think, is he going to have that 4,000 yard?
Drake May last year didn't need 3 years.
I know,
the guy's
but
already the number 1 pick in the draft, in my
opinion.
Year.
I don't think we're gonna see that necessarily.
If you don't think we're gonna see that this year, then you need to drop him off of your tier 1, in my opinion. Like I honestly, like I that's what I expect from him with the offensive tools. JT Sanders, I mean Xavier Worthy, AD Mitchell. This offensive line.
See more from AD Mitchell. AD Mitchell's got to get through a season where he's. I think that before he's like
your temperament when it comes to Texas this year makes me want to take my house deed and put it on playoff. Because I think that like this idea of Texas stinks and they're Texas is like actually creating great value for a team that's legitimately awesome.
What are the playoff odds for Texas right now? Is it like plus like 200? What is it?
I have them to win the national title this year. Because I think that's a good hedge opportunity.
That was a genuine response. But seriously, what are their odds?
Their national championship is 19-1.
Okay,
and hold on, let me pull.
That's pretty good value.
19 is pretty good value for a team that might be underdogs in only one game this year.
If they win the national
road
championship,
game at Alabama.
If they win the national championship, do we get an SEC chant at the national championship game?
I don't know.
That's my burning question.
Quinn Ewers is also like one of the top 3 Heisman odds too. So, like there
is
this.
Cam says plus 325 on the playoff odds for Texas. That's pretty steep.
They're going to win the Big 12 because they're minus 125. Minus 125 to win the Big 12. They're the favorite.
Ari, last year's Big 12 champion didn't make the playoff.
I'm just saying it's going to be difficult because they have a road game at Alabama early in the season,
which I think they'll win. So I don't want to hear I hate Oklahoma.
Yeah. But I'm saying, like, if they win that game, they're going to be favored in every game for the rest of the year.
I know, and that's when Texas is at its worst.
This can't be a Texas discussion. All I'm saying is, you put them in your tier 1 button. I think it's time to come around. And if you don't, me and Manny will be at the parade, and you're not allowed to come.
Sometimes tier 1 quarterbacks throw 3 picks and lose games at Iowa State.
I'm telling you this right now. You're going to be somebody who's on our Saturday night show a lot this year. We're going to be co-hosting a lot of shows in this channel.
Yes, sir.
If and when Texas is awesome this year, and you're on this show,
I think
you're not participating in the fun.
Ari, they're going to be awesome. They're going to be awesome, and then they're going to lose to someone stupid. Okay. That's what's going to happen.
I'm saying if we're talking about Texas as a national championship contender in week 5, you better check your enthusiasm at the door. I will stand there, and I'll put my hand on your chest. I'll put my hand on your chest.
You're not allowed at the club, Dave.
You're not allowed at the parade this year.
Oh, man.
Okay.
Texas Tech winning the Big 12 after Texas loses to after Rocco Beck throws for 5 touchdowns to beat Texas. I'm gonna laugh so hard. I'm sorry. That's where we're at.
It's gonna be a funeral in the podcast feed that day if that happens. But I'm willing to get hurt again because I look at it's simple math sometimes to me, and college football isn't simple math, but the ingredients, the talent, and the schedule all add up to a playoff team.
What you're saying is she's changed, sorry. She's come around.
She's a new girl.
Different.
Yeah. She is a tier 1 quarterback on Dave Ubben's Big 12 quarterback tiers list for the first time since Sam Hellinger, which, I mean, I don't know. That was a long time ago. But they didn't have the talent.
But they did.
How
yeah.
long ago was it? I saw him at a
2020.
sushi restaurant a few weeks ago,
2020.
a few weeks ago, before a Dave Chappelle concert, and I was with a Texas fan, and he got up from our dinner and he went down to tell Sam Ellinger he's his favorite Longhorn ever. I thought that was like a cool thing.
One time I ran into Marcin Gortat at a mall in Phoenix.
Who's Manny? What's your best athlete in the wild story?
Amari Sotomayor. I was in Charlotte. Heat were playing a playoff series, and we actually went out drinking together for a couple of hours. That was fun.
I've got two. I was at the same pool party that Johnny Manziel went to after he got drafted in Vegas. And everybody freaked out that he was in Vegas like right after he got drafted. I don't know if you remember this. It was day late. It was one of the best days of my life. I had a great time. Incredible. Johnny had a good time too. And the person I was there with got taken up on stage and they took pictures together. And then she came back to me. So Johnny, take that. Secondly, I beat Channing Tatum in Papa Shot in a Louisville, Kentucky bar the day of the Manny Pacquiao. It was the Pacquiao fight against Floyd Mayweather, and it was the same day as the Kentucky Derby. And we played Papa Shot for drinks, and Channing Tatum lost. So I beat him at basketball. And then the loser was supposed to buy me and my friends beers. And then he never bought the beers. So I'm putting you on notice, Channing Tatum. Not only did you lose at your craft to me, you owe me and my friends a round of Bud Light Limes. Okay?
Before we move on to the ACC, I'd like to drop 3 quick D-list celebrity sightings. In one trip to the St. Louis airport, I ran into the dad from Smart Guy and Morgan Spurlock of Super Size Me fame. And I once rode in a car, a tiny car with Dave Winfield. So how about that?
That's cool.
Good
Yeah.
story.
ACC, let's do it. Ari, one man, one tier one. I think we're in alignment on here.
Yeah.
Mr. Drake May. I think he's in a class of his own. Maybe that changes, but I think it's disrespectful to him to suggest that anyone is with him on that level. Tier two man, Jordan Travis and Riley Leonard. Again, guys that have done it, that we've seen, and that both those guys, for all that they've already done, I think still have some upside for sure to join Drake May in the first rounders club. I wouldn't rule that out. Tier 3, a weird mix of guys. Cade Klubnik, who I've said before is created in a lab to be a great quarterback. Did not love what I saw from him in the Orange Bowl. We need to see more from him. But this is his team now. He's got a full offseason. And then a couple of interesting transfers. Garrett Schrader, pretty good year last year. Perhaps best known for his helicopter at Mississippi State. But
I thought he was best known for being Hank Schrader's nephew.
No, that's not correct. But the
yeah, because Hank Schrader is a fictional character for Breaking Bad. Yeah.
Yes. Still sitting on the toilet as we speak. But
yeah.
No, I think a guy that pretty interesting year last year. Syracuse, odd team. We mentioned them on last show. Started 6-0, finished 7-6. I think that's right. Brandon Armstrong, who I'm all in on this year, reuniting with Robert Anai. 2 or 3, he's got – I'd have to look at the numbers, but other than Drake May, he's probably got the best single season of any of these guys and maybe one of the worst seasons of any of these guys. So what is this year? We'll see. Tier 4, Phil Jerkovic at Pitt, Emmett Moorhead at BC. I think Emmett Moorhead's got some upside. Jack Plummer at Louisville. We'll see if – I think he's got some upside. I think we'll see if Jeff Brom can continue working his quarterback magic. Complicated situation with Tyler Van Dyke at Miami. Manny, we'll let you tackle that one here in a second. I don't know what to make of TVD, guy that was on the sort of precipice of the Heisman conversation last year, and then just, along with the rest of Miami, has a nightmare season. And then our Tier 5 guys, Mitch Griffiths, who has gotten banged up in camp and might not have that Wake Forest job locked down. Haynes King at Georgia Tech, another guy that was on the short list of the Heisman, what was it, 2 years ago? Maybe it was last year, and that has not come to fruition. Checked out of Texas A&M. And then Kyron Drones and Grant Wells. Ari, we've talked a little bit about Drones of Baylor. And then one of the more interesting but questionable transfers, Tony Muskett at Virginia. That job is still not settled, but we'll talk about him. The Monmouth transfer. Intriguing. So there's your ACC tiers. fellas.
I'm gonna let Manny cook on this because this is his conference and Miami's a
Yes.
very important thing. But I have one story to tell. I don't know if you guys know
Okay.
this, but I'm addicted to trading cards and
All right, I
card
lose
breaks.
count of your addictions. So
Yeah, so does my wife. But I got a really valuable Tyler Van Dyke card, and I put it on eBay, and it sold for $150 or $200. And I was like, I thought it was only going to be like a $30 card.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty rare card, but it's like, I was thinking to myself after it's sold, I was like, did I just sell a card that's going to be worth like a ton of money in 5 years because this guy sees something in Tyler Van Dyke that I don't? Or is it just a major Miami fan? I was just kind of blown away by what it sold for, and I thought, and I always kind of feel like I'm the underappreciating of Tyler Van Dyke because I never give him a second thought, even going into last year. So, where do you think of his ranking, and do you see anything in the ACC here, Manny, that you think is off?
Well, I'll start with Tyler. Obviously, you go back to that 6-game stretch in 21 where they won at Pitt, right? And Pitt went on to win the ACC championship with that team. And you're like, wow, 20 touchdowns, 3 picks. This guy's for real, right? 300-yard games every week. Obviously, he was in the wrong offense last year. And Mario made the coordinator change, brought in somebody who's in Shannon Dawson, who's going to run the kind of offense that Tyler wants to play in. My thing for Tyler is I still don't know if he's got like the receivers or even the tight ends to like put up huge numbers. Like Mario did a phenomenal job recruiting offensive linemen, so I think he's going to be more well protected this year. But I think from a playmaker perspective, they're still sort of lacking there. So I'm not going to put like I think putting him in tier 4 is fine. I think it's probably the right place considering he's coming off of a grade 3 AC joint sprain last year and needs somebody to step up there. But the only guys that I look at, like Brennan Armstrong, you mentioned it, like he obviously had a huge year. He's getting hooked back up with Robert Anai, who was his coordinator at Virginia when he did well. And of course, Anai did a great job last year with Garrett Schrader at Syracuse. So he's a good quarterbacks coach. My thing with Brennan Armstrong at NC State is it's sort of the same scenario. They lost some receivers as well. So it's like, who's he throwing the ball to? Where are the playmakers on that team? So I don't think there's much difference between Brennan Armstrong and Tyler Van Dyke. I think that category, with Phil Djokovic and Jack, like the tier 4 guys, I think Brennan's probably better suited there. And then, Jordan Travis and Riley Leonard, to me, they could very well slip into tier 1. Riley Leonard really impressed me last year. He's the reason Duke won 9 games. So, but I understand why you got Drake May in his own class. So I don't necessarily have a problem with that. And everybody knows about Jordan Travis. Is he still second in the Heisman odds? I'm not even sure.
Yeah,
people are really amped up about him.
Yeah, so
Riley Leonard might be the most underrated player in America, quite frankly.
He really is, and I think he's an NFL guy for sure. I think he's the kind of guy that, again, we look at like a Brock Purdy, right, and what he's doing with the 49ers. Like I could see Riley Leonard totally being the same type of guy where he doesn't necessarily go very high in the draft, but he's an NFL quarterback and somebody that is just really good at what he does. And so I like your list. I don't necessarily have any problem. Like I said, the only thing I'd probably do is drop Brendan Armstrong to tier 4 just because he was so terrible last year, and I don't know that he's got the weapons around him at State this year to be explosive. But other than that, like that's my take on it. The other thing I would say with Mitch Griffis is like the one thing Wake Forest has going for it and why they're good every single year is they've had the same offensive coordinator in place for 10 years.
Continuity reigns.
Yeah, I mean, it just that kind of stuff, it's almost like plug and play. And I know Sam Hartman was unreal, and I think he's going to do great at Notre Dame this year. But, like, Mitch Griffis, you go back to the one start he made last year, and I know it was an FCS opponent or whatever, but, like, he looked the part. Like, he looked like a Wake Forest quarterback, just another dude that can lead him to 8 or 9 wins. So, to me, I think Griffis probably, if healthy, can get back into that tier 4 category.
Guys, do we need to have a Cade Klubnik discussion here?
Let's do it. It's yes.
Tier 3?
Ari, I need to see more. Do you
want to have the same exact argument from the beginning of the show again?
All right, here's the thing. I think here's my okay. I'm gonna go scales of justice on you. Okay, I love the talent. I love the head on his shoulders. I think he's gonna work as hard as he needs to. I think he's gonna put himself in the best possible position to succeed. I love that he's going to pair up with Garrett Riley. I think they can make some magic. On the other side, I have a lot of questions about the receivers. And also, like, man, when
Dave, you're
Tennessee,
contradicting yourself. You can't have questions
I'm not
about receivers.
Yes.
Is
And
he
then
a good quarterback?
Yes, he's very good, but the production and can he prove it? I don't know. And I think my biggest question with him specifically is, man, when Tennessee pressured him in the Orange Bowl, he was freaking out. He was seeing ghosts, and he turned into not a good quarterback when he was getting pressured. And to some degree, everyone does, and some of that's probably inexperience and not having played a ton. But man, like, you got to develop some poise, and I don't know if you can do that in one off season. So you might need to have a little bit more experience to take the leap. I love the raw talent. I just don't know that you're going to see it, immediately overnight.
Well, the thing that I will give you credit for here is that, unlike in the Big Ten, I think that the way that you did the tiers on this one would actually reflect your draft order if you had to pick one. Like, it would be clearly Drake May number 1, then Jordan Travis 2, Riley Leonard 3, and then Cade 4.
It's probably close. Yeah.
I just think that I would put Cade into tier 2 with the other two, but if he's the best tier 3 quarterback, I can live with that as well.
He's the most interesting quarterback in the league.
Well, I don't know. I think Jordan Travis is pretty interesting. Like, I watched Florida State play last year. I know they got better and stronger as the year went on, and I know that people are super excited about what Florida State can do this year. And let me tell you, I cannot wait to watch them play LSU, because I think it's a one of the only non-conference games, or especially the week that it's played, and it's on a Sunday, that features 2 legitimate national championship contenders. Like, are we actually on board with the notion that Florida State can win a national title this year or play in the playoff? And if so, how much of that is supposed to be on his shoulders and him kind of living that expectation? And Manny, you're in Florida. Like, is Jordan Travis legitimately that good, or are we kind of losing the vision here?
No, I mean, I think he's turned into that quarterback. I think most people who watched him play, at Louisville and when he first got to Florida State would never have envisioned him turning into this quarterback that's much more accurate. He's improved his accuracy downfield. He's made better decisions of when to run with the ball and when to sort of just, dump it off. I think, number one, it helps when you've got a lot more talent around you, right? Like, having Johnny Wilson last year was a huge pickup for them. Now you bring in a Keon Coleman. You bring in some other transfers at tight end. You upgrade the offensive line. Like, he's built to have a huge year this year and to be very much in that Heisman race and to lead Florida State to the playoff. I think he's capable of it. So I buy the hype. My thing is, I just don't know how many NFL scouts think Jordan Travis is an NFL caliber quarterback, whereas I think Riley Leonard on the other side is probably more built to be a successful NFL quarterback. So he
won me over last year. I'm not gonna call myself a Jordan Travis hater. I was a Jordan Travis doubter coming into the year, kind of like rolling my eyes. Is Mike Norvell about to get fired? All of those things. And then you watch the LSU game. You didn't see a ton to change your mind. And then I forget who was the Thursday night game against, Manny.
They won at Louisville.
Yeah, that was one of the games, and there were a couple others. He just keeps making these throws. Guys are bearing down on him, laying into him, and he's putting the ball up where it needs to be, finding open guys, making good decisions, taking a beating every now and then. And he won me over last year, and I think it can continue this year. I think when you grow up, as much as Ari wants to microwave every quarterback and make them into Peyton Manning overnight, sometimes it does take time, and sometimes you can become that guy. And last year, it seemed like he blossomed into that guy.
Well, like, here's the thing about the microwave comment. I just can't remember off the top of my head, and maybe it's just because it's like confirmation bias of my own opinion. But when's the last time a quarterback, like, the only time I can think of a quarterback being kind of meh for 3 years and then turning into a star is Joe Burrow. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know how many career arcs are similar to that, to the truly legitimate, amazing quarterback prospects that come through college football. Like, are there a lot of those that I'm just not remembering? Because, like, a lot of times I feel like if a freshman is that guy, it very early on, at least by their sophomore year. Like, I just feel like if you're in year 3 or 4 of your college career and it hasn't happened for you yet, then that's an indication that 9 times out of 10, it's just not going to happen at all. So, I'm not saying it's impossible. I've seen Joe Burrow with my own 2 eyes walk into Ohio State camp as a freshman wearing a shirt with the wolf howling at the moon, and now he's like the coolest guy on the face of the planet and one of the best quarterbacks in the league and on the face of the earth. I think that what Jalen Hurts did in his transformation at Oklahoma and into the quarterback that he's becoming to the NFL is some of the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life. I mean, we're talking about a guy who got benched at halftime of a national championship game who was playing in the Super Bowl as a starting quarterback. And not just that, has an incredible and accurate arm, which was the reason he got benched in the first place. So, I know that this stuff happens, but like when we're talking about tiers, I just am not patient when it comes to, I've got to wait 3 years to see if this guy's actually good. It's like if Quinn Ewers isn't great this year, he's just probably not going to be a great quarterback. He might be good, he might be serviceable, but he's just not going to be great. He's not going to turn into Peyton Manning.
What about like Kenny Pickett, Hendon Hooker? Are we going to count Michael Penix maybe? What about Bo Nix? Right. Like it does happen, Ari.
I mean, Bo Nix has been an exciting player since he was at Auburn.
Exciting, but not very good. Exciting, but not very good.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
last year he was awesome. 5-star also, Ari.
And I guess there are exceptions to it, sure. And like Hendon Hooker, wouldn't, ever since he got on the field was awesome, right? I mean, like his first year there, he had flashes.
He was
the second
good,
he stepped on the field.
He was good, but he was never, when he came to Tennessee, the idea that he could contend for a Heisman Trophy, in part because he signed up to play for Jeremy Pruitt, but the idea that he could contend for a Heisman Trophy was such fantasy that it's ridiculous. And there he was.
One other point I wanted to make, guys, just on the ACC, since we compared, we've talked about all three of these conferences, the Big Ten and Big 12 included. The ACC's got, of these three conferences, the most experienced quarterbacks in terms of guys that just, getting tons of snaps. Obviously, Travis, 27 starts. You look at Louisville with Plummer, 25 starts in college. Brennan Armstrong, we talked about already. Phil Dracovic, 24 starts. Schrader's got 25 starts. Even Tony Muskett, who's the quarterback at Virginia, I know he's on your bottom tier. He's 25 starts in college at Monmouth, and Grant Wells, 34 starts for him in his career.
Marshall,
come bowl game, like if these dudes are still playing, and I would assume most of them probably would, right? Like why not give an extra audition to try to get yourself drafted professionally? Like they'll have some of the older quarterbacks in college football. This conference will.
Well, I think that was a good show, Manny. I think that your spreadsheet will be available to anybody who files a Freedom of Information Act with the Athletic. They'll give you Manny's hard drive. Appreciate all the stats that you always bring, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, Dave. It was fun. I just want to remind everybody that this was the first half of the quarterback tiers. We're going to also still be doing them from the SEC, Pac-12, and Group of 5. And this is also week 0. So, football's here. We're going to have our Thursday preview show, and Saturday night, we're going to have a recap show, our first of the year. That'll be live on YouTube after the primetime game. And then Sunday this year, we're going to be doing a new show called Sunday Sound Off or something of that sort, where we will be taking fan submissions, voicemails, texts, questions, tweets, and forming it into a show where we can kind of contextualize what happened the day before. So I'm excited about the season. We're going to get into our regular season schedule that we had last year. Manny, that means the return of Stars Matter that we'll be recording and publishing on Thursdays. And, the whole crew, Power Hour, everything's getting back together. It's a really exciting time. I know it's kind of felt like drinking through, water through a fire hydrant or fire hose. I mean, it's just been a lot happening. The podcast is really getting back into the swing of things, and I think that we're starting to really get a good groove here, and couldn't happen at a more perfect time as football season starts. Guys, I highly recommend betting on the NFL preseason. It's certainly a fun way to be engaged in football before the season starts. And if you're not, and you're just being a functional adult, then that's good too. Thank you for listening to the latest edition of Until Saturday. Please follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave a thumbs up and hit the subscribe link. And if you would be kind enough to leave a nice review, it would be a nice break from some of the people who haven't. Also, if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel to get the live shows, to watch our faces as we do this, the link is in the show description. For Manny Navarro, Dave Ubben, I'm Ari.